Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keep It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McAllis, and it is a beautiful Wednesday somewhere in the universe, hopefully in your world as well. So, we've got Dr. Nancy on, and we are going to continue with some amazing downloads that she's put into paper and book form that we've been reviewing. And then we get all kinds of intuitive light bulb hits, and then we go off what seems like rambling about something, but it all comes back to the importance of this book. So please hit subscribe so you do not miss any upcoming episodes. And welcome again, Dr. Nancy.
Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
Love it.
And yeah, it's so important. I think you brought up a good point right in the intro, is because a lot of times we may feel we're going off on a tangent, but somebody needs to hear this. There's a reason why we're called to kind of talk about this topic, because somebody may have a question, or it's something that's maybe what they're going through at this present moment, and it's what they need to hear. So yes. Well, we will start at the bottom of page 11. I'll go ahead and read it, and then we'll dive right in and
All
start
right.
discussing it. The seeker is to surrender completely to the most powerful force of existence. What the spiritual student is being led to do can be trusted when asked from the living essence that created all of life. When possible, they contemplate on how much of their selves are greatly loved, and they rely on the infinite presence within. As a person gets used to remembering, a wonderful serenity comes with flawless vision and enters immediately. We did touch on this in the prior episode, where we're saying, even though you may be considered different, you just have this internal fortitude that says, hey, this is service to the divine plan. And no matter, what other people think, I wish them well, but I'm here to do, what is it that Jesus said? I'm about my Father's business. And so he took it seriously, and we do too, especially when you are completely guided and fully awake and have aware of your purpose work and your assignment here. Then there's kind of this sense of internal knowingness, and there's a comfort in that too, because you're like, okay, now I know why I'm on this crazy planet. There's a purpose why I wasn't just hurled here. And but we're in cosmic university. We're still learning ourselves, even as spiritual masters in this on this assignment. That there's always curveballs that are thrown at us, and situations that come, and we have to just roll with it. And so yes, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that once they've been on the spiritual journey for a while.
Well, I have to agree with you, and I had to write that down, Cosmic University, because I feel like we're in the spiritual Earth school, and some of us are still in elementary school, some of us in middle school, some in high school, but we're still in a university of some sort. We're on a campus somewhere on the Earth plane, somewhere in the universe on the Earth plane. So I
Yeah.
like that.
And your frequency is tracked. We all have our individual signature frequency. It's like our spiritual fingerprint, so you don't get lost out in the cosmos. Source always knows where you are, because you are an aspect of Source, so it doesn't lose itself. So I think that there's comfort in that too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we can go on to the next one, unless there's something else you wanted to add to that.
No, keep going.
Okay. Now we're at the top of page 12 for those that are following along in the book. Ascension is consciousness, comes by way of many steps. Soul energy needs to be preserved and utilized for the spiritual journey. As a person advances, the viewpoint will transform with luminousness, transparency, insights, and enthusiasm to serve the divine plan. Yeah, you get on board. In the beginning, you're like, oh my gosh, what did I sign up for here? But then you get on board, and then you get this fire underneath you, and then it just starts, it's like the top of a mountain, and it's this little snowball, and as it rolls down the mountain, it just starts building momentum, and more snow packs onto it, and next thing you know, it's like you feel like it's like an avalanche. It's just so amazing how all these opportunities start to present themselves and people come into your life. And it's almost like there's a beacon that goes out and says that this person is now on assignment and they're doing their job. And now things need to come to help with this purpose work. And you'll see this with many people. You know, we talked about Mother Teresa. She had people from all over the world, women that would write in, says, I want to be a part of the Sisters of Charity. And what was very interesting, she didn't accept a lot from the United States, which a lot of people didn't realize. And in her writings, she was asked, I think by, I don't know if it was a reporter or whatever, because she had a lot of, you know, when she got her Nobel Prize for Peace that she accepted in Stockholm. And, you know, there's always people who, when they finally had an opportunity to be in her presence, could ask her questions. And one of the questions is, why don't you accept many women from the United States as sisters of charity into your order? And she said, because they're needed in the United States. These souls, these specific special souls that would be willing to do this work actually need to be in the United States. They're needed there. I just thought that was very interesting.
I was
And
expecting a very different answer. I thought, well, you know, you United States people are a little entitled and, you know, maybe you can't handle it out here. And, you know, and then when you said that, I'm like, oh, I like that answer.
yeah, yeah, we were needed here. Those souls need to be here. So I thought that was very actually generous of her. She wasn't going to take them away from the United States. We're like, no, no, you need to be there. You got a tough assignment there. You're needed there. So
Yeah. And then
yes.
I was thinking about your enthusiasm. And, you know, what was coming to mind was like, you know, you sign up for an exercise class and you're enthusiastic about it. You get there and you park and you go inside, you're still enthusiastic. And then it begins and you're like, oh dear God. Like, and I'm
What did
describing
I sign
me. Yeah,
up
this is how I feel. And then I'm like, you know, I get through the first 15, 20 minutes and I'm like, oh man, is this almost over? And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, this feels good. I'm getting through it. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you go right out and you go, oh, that was that okay. Well, where's the next class? So, you know, for me, every day I get up with an enthusiastic part. And I think the more I stay very present in this path of being a spiritual student, I look forward to the challenges. I look forward to um, you know, the equal grain and also the hiccups and the hills, the mountains, and then the dips and the valleys too. I look forward to it because I see how I play differently and then how I stay present in my energies so that I can stay enthusiastic, not just excited, but that I could kind of cruise through it with more presentness in order to excel. Like, oh, wow, I would not have responded this way last year to this, right?
Mhm.
So there comes this graceful wisdom I think I'm developing and I'm loving it. So every time something else comes along and that little bit of fear gets in there, like, oh, this is unknown. This isn't, I don't recognize what I go, okay, and this too shall pass. I'm going to get in there and this too shall pass, right? And then I'm ready to sign up for the next one.
Yes. It's you touch on so many things. One of them it's funny as you were talking, it's like you get into these situations, you're like, all right, spirit, I'd like to see how this one pans out. Let's see how you get me out of this one. Let's see
Yeah.
how you handle this situation. I'll do my best, you know. And sometimes you do your best and then you surrender. I'm like, and then you just sit back and go, okay, let's watch spirit work this one out.
That's the truth. That's the truth. Because you're
But
really riding it together in a way. And
yeah.
you do have to let spirit lead a little bit instead of trying to get in this, okay, let me figure out how I can strategize and work through this. You're almost coasting blindly with the spirit. But there are times you come along and you're like, really? Really? I mean, come on. I have to do what? You want me to go where? You want me to walk up to someone and say, what? Like, okay. And you just develop that faith. You will
Yes.
always, and because also the more you are in this student form, you are not you're not taking responsibility for the end result or the receiving of something that you may have done or the delivery system or whatever it is. You just accept it. I did what I was supposed to do. I cannot be responsible if that upsets them or makes them happy. And that's where you come back into, I think, a different settling in of being neutral. Like you can see someone respond to something, it could be all over the spectrum, right? And but you don't respond with it. So if they start crying about something, you don't necessarily cry about it. You're much more in your groundedness with all of it, allowing them to have their experience. You know,
Yes.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's funny when you were talking, I was thinking about, I know you've had this experience where you have a conversation with somebody and then you walk away and you go, I know spirit brought them to me to have this conversation, that
Mm-hmm.
they needed to hear this, that you needed to interface with them, that there was something within them, their soul was asking, and it was almost like their spirit guides led them to you because you were what they needed at that time. And so yeah, it's so interesting how, I mean, I just yesterday I was at the dentist's office. I had like this $35 bill that the dental insurance wouldn't cover. So I go in there and I think I'm just paying my bill, right? You know, there's so many things that, and I'll say to myself, well, here, I thought I was just going to lunch, but Spirit had other plans. I was supposed to be at this place at this time, and then these people interface with me. So I'm at the dentist, and then I step outside because I needed to take a call, or no, I to respond to a text. And the hygienist chases me down, and she's like, "Oh, I've been, because I had, she had was asking me, spiritual questions, and out of all the books, which one should I read first?" And I told her, "Our Divinity Revealed. It's my foundational book. It answers so many questions for people." And then she came out, and I said, I'm just getting ready to start classes in person here in Sedona, and because she had expressed an interest in the book, and I said, and she's like, "Oh, you're going to teach the class in person." And so here I thought I'm at the dentist office to pay my bill. She literally left her patient because she heard my voice in the reception room, and I stepped outside, and I was just outside the door, and she saw me, the back of me from the door, and she's running out, and I just said, "Hold on, let me run to my car and get a flyer." And so I got her a flyer on that particular class, and actually all the classes. But it was just so interesting how she'd only met me one time. It was just clean my teeth that first time. And so, yeah, we don't realize what an impact we make. And also how people's spirit guides will lead them to the highest frequency person in that they can have access to. So when you get a very high frequency, spirit's going to be sending them to you. Their spirit guides are looking around for the person that they can interface with, because these souls that really are awakening have so many questions, and they do need to interface with souls that have kind of tread this path a little bit longer and are seasoned. So yes, it's so interesting how I can relate to that very easily.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's see. I think that let me go to the next one. The true enemies are those who try to divide us and humanity. When you have connected with your individuality, you have broken your connection with the universe. So a lot of people look at this and go, "Oh, what does that mean?" Well, when you are when you get to a certain state of being, it's all about oneness. There is no division. There is no sense of us against them. That's taught to us when we're young, us against them. We have country borders and nationalism and all this stuff. So we're always being pinned against other people, but really there's no us and there's no them. There's just us in a sense of oneness. Because as higher light beings, we begin to understand the oneness in the universe, that everything is created from source, manifesting in different forms. Is basically what the
Yeah, because
that
as soon as
line.
you read that, in my head, I'm going, and what exactly does that mean? And then you
Yeah.
said, a lot of people ask themselves, what does this mean?
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
All right.
Talks
Well,
about the oneness.
that's good to know. Okay.
Okay, so the next one is, do you spend more time in your mind or with your higher self? Watch and observe the mental chatter. Let those thoughts go. Watch the thoughts. See the future version of you now. Okay, so there's a couple of different things in here that jump out. And one of them is, who do you spend the time with most of the day? Are you in your mind or are you in your higher self? Because if we're connected to the higher self, which is our true aspect of ourself, because our ego is just an appendage of the higher self, our soul self. And yes, we need to step into our ego a lot of times to for financial transactions and stuff like that. But you can pretty much, when you get to a certain level, stay in your higher self majority of the day, where you're really more in the observant level. And also, when you step into your individuality, we're talking more of like the personality, and which is an aspect of the mind. And then you've broken your connection with the universe because you're in your mind and not really so much with your soul or your higher self, if that makes any sense.
Well, it makes total sense because in 2017 is when I merged with my higher self. And it was, between being there physically going through it almost in a dream state, like, and then how I felt thereafter was a completely different meat and potatoes of
Mm,
my physicality and my energy. It was different. And so I look at us as being conjoined now because we've met, we're conformed, you know, in this physical, and we act as one. We speak as one, we think as one, but there are times when I can tell the difference between who's talking and who's talking because it's a completely different energy
mhm,
when the higher self um, speaks louder through me. Softer or louder doesn't mean like yelling, right? I can just tell the difference, and it's a profound difference. And then, interesting enough, then all my sessions for years after that was helping people meet their higher selves through past life regression. It was like we go in past life regression, and all of a sudden they were meeting their higher self, and I was doing all this conjoining of higher self with people. It was amazing. And then their journeys back to me years later of how they feel very different and how they commune with themselves. But we do spend much of our time in that head chatter because that's what we're taught, and that is a distraction, right?
yes.
Already know that that's a plotted distraction. And so even prayer, forms of prayer where you're repeat, 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 you're doing it in your mental mind, it becomes autopilot. So you're
Mhm,
not really feeling it or seeing it or being with what maybe the intention of that prayer is. But we become more of an observant listener. That's what my higher self just said. When you're conjoined with your higher self, you become a different listener,
mhm,
and you see, sense, and feel things and translate it differently as you're one with that higher self. And you'll know the difference between your own mind chatter and then the conversations that you're having. And then for me, the higher self used to have me break away from conversations with people. They would just have me break away and walk away and recognize it as that energy is right. And so now your other sensories are being quiet, they're being numbed, right? Whereas we want you to work this room and let those sensories come up and start using them and be a listener and less of a talker or taking in other people's issues. Because a lot of times people, when they talk, if you really listen, it's a lot of mumbo jumbo. Like if one more person was to come up and talk to me about the weather, I literally want to go pale in the face. I'm like, what? Are we still on that? Like, talk about, do you have anything else you want to bring up? Right? It's like they're stuck on the weather. So anyway, just saying.
You brought up so much. It's the whole time when you're talking about, the whole time you're talking about chatter, it brings me back to sitting in front of one of my teachers, Mahatma Ji, and he would do this: senseless chatter, enough of the senseless chatter, cut it out. He would constantly say, no chit chat, no sense. He called it senseless chatter. And if you notice, most people talk in a bandwidth of pretty basic, like the weather, what's going on in the neighborhood, or I don't know, the news. And so they don't really get beyond a certain bandwidth. But when you get to a state of being that's of a higher frequency, you're not interested in the senseless chatter. It's actually draining. You just don't even find it interesting. And that's why you'll be asked to step away, or else politely say, excuse me, and excuse yourself. You go to the bathroom, even if you don't have to go to the bathroom. So you can just step away because you just don't have the energy or the interest to waste the energy on senseless chatter. And so you'll find a lot of these beings don't say much. Or if they do, what they do say is not really anything about senseless chatter. It's usually, if it's not spiritually based, they're not really interested in talking to you. And so it's interesting how, a lot of these high level teachers, they really, you just kind of sense that you're not going to talk to them about what's going on in your neighborhood. It's going to be spiritually topic based, or they're not interested. And so it's so interesting that you bring all this up about, the senseless chatter and the bandwidth level.
Well, the other thing, when you were just talking too, it's like one of the ways you'll start knowing that you're really starting to congeal with your higher self is that when you start to recognize senseless chatter, you recognize it as just air, like it has no meaning at all whatsoever, and that it is on a frequency and a bandwidth that does not match or resonate, even if you know what they're talking about and you're trying to be polite and nod and comment, you're feeding that for them. So when you recognize the senseless chatter, that's when you know you're listening with your listening ears to your higher self.
Yes. Yeah. And you just, I've had friends say to me all the time, just like, I don't know how you're able to do this, but I'm in a parking lot, or I'm, I don't know, somewhere. And whatever they start talking about, somehow I'm able to flip it around and talk about spiritual topics. And next thing you know, we're in a spiritual conversation. So I like to use that to kind of segue, whatever their of interest is. And then I try to segue it into somehow turning it into a spiritual conversation. And so if I'm going to stand there and have a conversation with someone, I say, well, we're going to turn it spiritual. And a lot of times they're curious, or, they can start to like, wow, I never thought about it like that before. Or just so yeah, if you're kind of stuck in a situation, you can't exactly just walk away. Then I just go ahead and say, well, okay, well, I'm going to use this to spirit's advantage, and we'll go ahead and start having a spiritual conversation instead.
That's amazing. I find myself smiling and nodding more when they're talking. I'm like, because I don't want to feed into it. I don't want to keep feeding it, right? And I'm not even going to process what they're saying, because it's just on a different, it's on a different frequency. So I just smile and nod. I just had a woman the other day after a party walk up to me, and she's rubbing my shoulder. I'm so sorry I didn't have an opportunity to talk with you. And the whole time she's rubbing my arm, she's talking about herself and all of her problems. And so I'm just looking at her eyes and just smiling like, okay. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. So I didn't switch it around to be about me. It was never about me. She just wanted another ear and another body to talk about her. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have to learn to recognize the senseless chatter. We have to learn to recognize, I have learned in the past year, a few friends I'll talk to and I go, people talk too much. I need less talk. I don't need to be silent. I don't need to go hide, but I don't want to be around people that just keep talking to talk to talk to talk to talk if you can't get into something else. So that's just my frequency, just not blending with that frequency. So once you start recognizing that this is occurring to you in small ways, subtle ways,
Yes.
start paying attention to it. Say, oh, thank you, higher self. Thank you, source, for helping me recognize that. How can I handle that next? Should I be a little more quiet? Should I flip it around to something? What would you suggest? And let higher self take the lead.
Yes, and it is a case by case basis.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. But I know that a lot of times if I'm, and I don't go to a lot of gatherings, but usually the gatherings I do go are spiritually based.
Yes.
Um, and but once in a while, I don't know, we find ourselves in these situations, and I'm just exhausted, when I leave, because it's draining.
Mhm.
And whereas when you get into these higher states, it's actually fulfilling. You love these deep spiritual conversations. But yes, I know a lot of times it's less said the better. A lot of times is the case. And because what I was told by my teacher, he's since left the planet, Mahatmaji came from India for 2 years to the United States. And I was fortunate to be one of his students those 2 years. And then he went back to India, and he's since passed. It was many, many years ago. But was that there's just like this, it's even hard to explain, but you just feel that you get to this place, this state of being, that you really, what he had shared was that whatever energy is not expended in a day, you get to keep. So if people expend all this energy, and they're exhausted at the end of the day, but if you're not expending that energy, then you get to keep that for you
Mhm.
to do other things with. So I just thought that was very interesting, because everything requires energy, whether it's driving the car, going to the grocery store, having conversations. And you'll find that a lot of people, that they have to have this quiet time, this inner time, and not that they, many of them become a lot more introverted, because they're using that energy for other things.
Yeah,
And
and that's not a bad thing because we're learning to self-calibrate. We're learning to self-regulate. So if it means, oh, I need to retreat, right? Literally retreat and go, or if I'm going to go out for certain many hours, I'm going to need to come back in for certain many hours, or whatever it is. And that's, to me, that's the phase of learning to calibrate and regulate. I've gone through that phase multiple times, and I'm at the point now where I can self-regulate wherever I am, which is a beautiful thing. Um, but I get what you're saying. And again, this is all about how you're communing with your higher self, your higher source consciousness, and it's really important that you start using that as your guide and tapping
yeah,
in to what you think, see,
yeah,
sense, feel, um, etc., and own it, and maybe journal it and figure it out. And then maybe at the end of the week go, hey, when I went out such and such day, I picked this up and I needed to come back home and cleanse it off. Right. So
yeah.
I don't know,
Well,
just
I
my
mean,
thought.
what you're talking about is what all the greats have done. Jesus would go out and have his quiet time. He went out, I mean, it's recorded. He spent 40 days and 40 nights out in the desert. He wanted to be alone. He had to connect. He had to commune with spirit. I mean, teaching and teaching and teaching. And, sometimes the apostles could be, I guess, quite a pain sometimes, I mean,
Sure.
it was even recorded that there was arguments among the apostles, who is going to be the greatest one amongst the all of them. And Jesus turns around and goes, really? I've been with you for 3 years, and you're arguing you're talking about ego stuff here. Who's the best? Who's the best student? And all this stuff. And he's like,
I gotta take a break in the desert for 40
these banana
days.
heads, I've been with them for 3 years, and they're arguing about who's the best student out of all of them. He's like,
Uh,
look, I ain't going to be with you forever. You're going to have to take over when I'm done. It's like, But yeah, I mean, there's definitely teachers need a break. And Buddha spent a lot of time alone. Krishna spent a lot of time alone. These just one of those things that it does require a lot of energy just being here on the planet. We do a lot of energetic work we're not even aware of. So yeah, there's a lot of things that are happening, and you have to have that time to connect with spirit. Say, okay, now what? What's next? What do you have for me? I do a check-in every morning when I wake up, and I check in. It's like, okay, I'm awake. I'm here. I'm back to the earth plane, and what do you have for me today? So it's yeah, and check-in is important, and remembering who you are. You're here in the earth school. You're on assignment. This is a temporary stay, and you're a foreigner in a foreign land. Don't forget that. And so,
Yes.
but once you get connected, you're always connected. When you get to a certain level, you don't disconnect because you're so fully awake that you know very clearly when you open your eyes, okay, I'm in it now. I'm in the hologram, the third dimensional reality, the matrix. I understand where I am and who I am and why I'm here. And so then it's really not as hard to connect because you're already so deeply connected that a lot of times it's the check-in is just checking in with the guides, and you already know your assignment. You've been handed that, and so you do it to your best of ability. And but yeah, you hear some of the stories of some of these ascended masters and what they went through with their students and their lives and their frustrations, and but we all get through it. So
Yeah, and you can be in a room full of people and either be the instructor, the teacher, or be the student, right? Well, you're always the student. And you'll see the students who are in constant overachievement. They want to be recognized. They want to say the right thing, or they want to say what that teacher or that instructor wants to hear, because they themselves are not settling in to just being quiet and looking at the instructor and listening as a student. So there's always that ego circle that's going
yes.
around, right? So that's a beautiful thing about online courses is you can sit in your house and take an online course and not look at all these people around you. Hey, I need attention, like, oh, can we just skip past that? You know? But yeah, if I was to take a trip for 40 days and 40 nights, I don't know that I'd come back. I can't believe, Sue came back. I'd be like, yeah, okay, this is pretty comfortable
What
out
happened
here.
to Sandy? Where is she? Is she
Yeah.
still on the planet?
Yeah. I don't know. That's a long time. I did a 3 day shamanic Indian retreat, and I had to go in the woods for 3 days alone. And I just kind of sat out there and did my thing. And when I came down the mountain, I realized that I'm the exact same way, whether when I'm alone that I am when I'm in public. So it just helped me solidify and confirm who I am. I didn't have any great revelations that maybe others did because I was already very grounded, right? But if I was to leave for 40 days, oh yeah, I don't know if I'm coming back.
I
I
think a
just
lot of
gotta,
us can relate to that.
yeah, I just have to
Once we
pack a
get
lot of
deep enough on the
underwear.
journey.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
hear me? I just said I'd have to pack a lot of underwear.
Well, I'm sure hopefully they have washing machines there, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right,
Oh
let's go
gosh.
on and do one more.
Okay. Let's see. We're at the bottom of page 12 for those that are following along in the book. Learn to chuckle because you see through the matrix while you stand in it. Learn to be the observer. When someone starts to yell, walk away because you are in control. Play the game and move through life with no anger or no resentment. Try, don't let them control you by getting angry. Recognize you are in the matrix. Step into what you want to be doing. Being the observer is what helps navigate this game of life. And sometimes it's so interesting. Talk about the game of life, and you wake up and it's like, all right, I'll play this game. All right, I'll pretend to be this person whose name, this body has been named this name. Yes, I was born in this country, and this is how it says, you know, how old I've been on this planet. And so it's kind of interesting how sometimes your higher self will like kind of chuckle along about this little game in the Matrix, because when you've basically have mastered the game of life, you recognize who you are, why you're here, and you're in the midst of this big holographic reality in the third dimensional level of plane. So yes, you can kind of chuckle sometimes with situations that come up in your life.
Well, I love that word chuckle. And the funny thing is, it popped in my head yesterday. And I remember as a kid, we would say, "Oh, I got a great chuckle out of that. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, they're just over there chuckling." And you don't hear many people use that word today. You
Yeah.
don't? So when it was in your book just now and you read it, I was like, oh my God, I went through this whole chuckling thing yesterday in my mind to all the ways I used to hear the word, use the word as a kid, chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. Now, now it's like I got to bring it back into the year of the fire horse. We're all going to chuckle. And actually, I posted something out and I said something like, you ready to get your crotch burnt? No, your crotch singed with the year of the fire horse, you might want to purchase fireproof panties and wean into this ride. And I started laughing and I said, because it wasn't really a laugh, it was a chuckle, because there's a difference, right? Supposedly, somewhere there's a difference. And I thought, that's just the humor that comes through with my guide team. But I just got the biggest kick out of it. And I just was repeating the word chuckle yesterday.
Oh, that's funny how we talk about it today.
Yeah.
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 We
I
ended
mean, you
wrapping
don't
it
hear
up
it.
with chuckling, which is great.
Yes.
It's a good way to end the episode.
Everyone should get a good chuckle in there. And so, hey, while you're doing that, remember to use this finger and do like, subscribe, share, comment, leave us a question for Dr. Nancy. It may get answered on the next show. All right. So until the next episode, Dr. Nancy, say goodbye to everybody.
Goodbye, everyone.